transform it. And when I witnessed military training to confiscate our guns, round up citizens, search our houses, and since then now it's admitted. I told you 9 years ago TSA would be on the highways. I watched a TSA meeting on C-SPAN for 2 hours. So, I mean, I know what they're going to do because they've told us. I knew they'd bankrupt Europe and announce a Bank of the World. Then they'll bankrupt the U.S., merge us all in. You'll pay 3 taxes at least directly to the criminals. They now admit in Time Magazine, Newsweek, it is Bank of the World. Goldman Sachs at the head of it, taking over Europe, getting rid of their sovereignty. That's some of the news. The Prime Minister of England has vetoed it. For the first time ever, England has used its veto to not enter this, because that would be the end of England's sovereignty. So wild stuff's going to start happening. Reportedly, they wouldn't even shake Cameron's hand. There was a big argument where Sarkozy and Merkel, in fact, I had those articles like 10 minutes ago. They're here in my stack. I'll get to them. The news is coming in so fast, I can't even deal with it right now. Finishing up with our food expert. He's also our sponsor, but I want to get him on just to break down what he's seeing. I'm seeing total media saturation now, which means obviously people are finally taking action. I know you've had to add more factories, massively increase your year-out buying of food for crops that aren't even planted yet to keep prices down at efoodsdirect.com. But Steve, just briefly, is this the greatest food buying you've ever seen?
Oh, it's absolutely absurd. I have never, and the thing is that what we're doing as Americans is we're competing with other countries. China and India, the big population countries of the world, are out there farming the planet. And what folks don't realize is that we literally are in a battle for our food, and what has to happen is realize that events like in Tennessee are just an indicator of how important food is. If it's drawing that kind of attention, some of it negative in this case, the fact is that we as Americans, you as a family, have to look at the fact that you are competing for your food today. The reason food prices are going up so much is these other countries are coming on and buying the raw materials that we're out there fighting to get so that we can process the food and get it to families so that they can put it into their storage. And in fact, a lot of those families are eating the food right now because the food costs in the grocery store are so high. So this is right now, you might say it's a war for freedom, but we are in a worldwide food war right now. So get yours is the only thing I can say.
And by the way, you saw this, Steve, 5 years ago, saying, watch, the commodities are going to go up. And now you watch any financial show, they admit the elite are getting out of paper currencies and going into farmland and food production. And they're saying that's the next big bubble. And
Alex, they are dumping their gold to go into food. They're dumping gold now. Remember when we said that it was paper going to gold, and then eventually the only currency on the planet would be food? That's where we are. People, large investors are dumping gold to get into food. They're buying the agriculture. What we're doing, and what I've concentrated all my time on right now, is buying raw materials out ahead of time so that these other countries don't buy them away from us so Americans can have food. That's where we are. And this Tennessee thing should only light the fuse that says this thing is in the process of exploding right now. You are absolutely right. You've been right the way you've been calling it for the last 10 years, Alex.
Well, I wish I wasn't right. We're watching the New World Order come into being. Steve Shank, give out. Well, I mean, I guess I should give it out here. In fact, I've got it here in my stack. I want to give out the phone number. It's 800-876-0871, 800-876-0871, or efoodsdirect.com/Alex to find the holiday specials. You've got some free sample packs and a lot more. Folks just pay for shipping and a lot of other specials running at efoodsdirect.com/Alex. Steve Shank, thanks for joining us.
Alex, I appreciate you.
We appreciate you. Thanks for coming on to explain to everybody what's happening out there. Okay, for the rest of the hour, Bob Chapman every Friday joins us. Always gracious to do that. Former military intelligence, the largest private silver and gold broker. For a very long time, had the largest private newsletter, put out the Gary Allen report for years, helped publish None Dare Call It Conspiracy. Gary Allen's son now runs Politica. Wow, talk about the son being different from the dad. But all of that is going on. And look, I've got insane news here in front of me, but in the 5 minutes we've got before we go to break, quite frankly, I'm looking for my Cameron articles, where I've got a bunch of mainstream articles where they're saying Cameron says no to the New World Order and stuff. I'm going to dig those out coming up to get Bob's take on it. But, Bob, I know you always are on top of it. I haven't asked you if you saw it yet, but it just came out 2 hours ago. Do you know about Cameron vetoing this super EU, stripping all the countries of their sovereignty because they realized England would forfeit all its sovereignty to the euro? I mean, he's a globalist, and he said he was going to support it. But what does this veto mean? And then you wrote an article, and others have written it, mainstream articles, admitting this is a total destruction of sovereignty. How are things going in Europe, where you lived for many years and studied things? What's happening right now? How big is this?
I think that England and the U.S. for a long time have wanted to take the euro down. As we all know, England never belonged to the euro, but they did and do belong to the European Union. And it looks like they made the excuse, look, we want concessions. And Sarkozy from France and Merkel from Germany said, no, we're not going to do that. And he says, good, I'm not joining your group. You're not going to do that to my country. And the group is what they want to do. And this will eventually affect England, but not immediately, because this ESM, the European Stabilization Mechanism, only would apply to the 17 countries that are in the Eurozone. The other 10 that don't use the euro, they'd get it later, and that includes England. So England's just saying, look, we're not going to do that. We're not going to allow you to have a committee in Luxembourg, and not going to allow you to have 17 or 27 secretaries of the treasuries, is what they'll call them, so you'll understand what they are, finance ministers. We're not going to give them immunity to do what they want to do, to tell governments what they can spend and how they can spend it within their own confines of their own country. And they want to control the budgetary and fiscal policies of each of the 17 countries originally, and then later the other 10. And ostensibly you'd have a new world currency, the euro, which the other 10 wouldn't even be part of anyway. So England's saying, look, we're not going to do that. It's surprising. But then again, really is it? You know, they've been ambivalent about joining the euro for years. They stayed out of it. Denmark, Sweden stayed out. And they've come back for votes since, and they've stayed out. They voted to stay out. And so what's going on here is a power struggle. And quite frankly, I think it plays right into Germany's hands, because 65% of Germans never wanted to be in the euro. The same number, if not 70%, depending upon whether you count men or women. Women are higher, they're 70%. They did not want the European Union. And Germany was forced into it. They said, look, they, being America and England and France, and particularly America and France, if you want to reamalgamate Germany, bring your country together, then you've got to stand up and be in the euro and the European Union. So Helmut Kohl gave in, and that's what they did. It cost the Western Germans, we'll call them, gazillions of trillions of dollars.
Oh, yeah. For those that don't know, Germany is still basically occupied. But back when they started merging the two countries, it was occupied from the east and from the west. And Germany didn't even really have a say from my research. I mean, wasn't even Helmut Kohl still a quasi-puppet? I mean, it was only de Gaulle. The French had to kick England and the U.S. out. Remember what de Gaulle did? And he grabbed his own nukes back and all that?
That's right. You
remember that was a big stand down right there.
De Gaulle was for France, and that was the end of it. He didn't care about any other alliance.
Well, yeah, he was ready to order the military to get into a fight. All right, because the bankers don't take your country over. It's like, oh, well, Hitler took over, well, we'll take it. And then France had to say, no, get out of here. America has to do the same thing to the New World Order.
The perfect water for drinking, bathing, and cleaning.
Yeah, what do you need the bankers to do? Wear big devilish top hats? And that's all John Corzine needs. I haven't even gotten Bob Chapman's take on that yet. We will be taking your calls, 800-259-9231, your financial questions for him. And I will, at the next segment, get into a ton of stuff. And yes, I'm wearing a top hat, folks. I was in a shop in Arkansas, and they were selling hats, and they had a top hat, and I thought I'd buy one because John Corzine's going to be on the nightly news tonight. It's not going to really be John Corzine, but I'm going to do a little bit. I occasionally do a little comedy bit, and so look for that tonight, 7 o'clock, InfoWars Nightly News. All right, going back to Bob Chapman, finishing up with the euro. I then want to get into the incredible MF Global testimony where he just said, I don't know where the money is. Gee, I'm really upset. I don't know where it is. The money disappeared, and then I resigned the next day, and the head of the CFTC that worked for me for many years at Goldman Sachs, he's invested, he's disappeared, and the Congress is basically like, well, that's all right. The money's missing, and it's first time in 150 years at the Chicago Mercantile, now the CME Group, that this has happened, but we're just not going to worry about it. So a new precedent is set. Bob Chapman, please continue.
Well, the precedent is set in the Corzine affair, we'll call it, MF Global. They're in commodities. Commodities are different than the other two major markets, which are bonds and shares. In fact, the bond market's 100 times bigger than the share market, and the commodity market makes up about 1% of everything. So it's a very small market. And I've always told people to stay away from it. And the reason why is you got to be a pro to be in there. And the agreement that you sign isn't worth the paper it's written on. They can hypothecate what's in your account, and they were rehypothecating from what I understand. For those of you who don't know, hypothecation is lending. So if you have an account and it's a margin account, which you have to have, then they can take the things which are in your account and use them, and sometimes lend things that are in there, money, whatever. And they were not only doing that, they were relending it again, which in the United States is illegal. In Europe, it is legal, and they use that loophole. But the bottom line here on the Sarbanes-Oxley is that Mr. Corzine, as the CEO of the company, had to sign off on the contents of the audit. And he had to know that there was money that was being misappropriated. And this didn't happen a month ago when we saw it. It was happening 6, 7, 8 months before. And that means the CFTC had to have known about it. Oh, they're saying they didn't. Well, of course they did. And, of course, being Corzine's friend, the man that runs the CFTC, I think he probably looked the other way, like they and the SEC have for so many years with politically connected or financially connected people. And I think he is as guilty as can be. I think his testimony touched upon subjects where it wouldn't subject him to prosecution. If they're going to find a way to prosecute him criminally, they're going to have to do their own digging. And that avoidance is what that appearance was all about. And there'll be more appearances, and he'll do the same thing. What they're all looking for, and there was more than him involved, is fines. And if I was running the CFTC, I'd say, well, that's simple. You 15 guys over there, you did all this stuff, and we're missing $1.2 billion, so come up with the money and pay the people back, and then we'll kick you out of the business so you can't do this again.